If you get into the comic industry in any form, certainly as a creator, sure, you hear a lot of stories. As a retailer, you get a lot of stories. You go to conventions, you get a ton of stories and shows at times. You hear a lot about how there's various misdeeds, there's problems, there's sexual harassment, there's and not as much racism, but you get a lot of kind of inappropriate behavior. So why does it go on? The comics industry prides itself as being, kind of the more progressive, one of the more lean forward industries to protecting people. I mean, what is it? Mark Waid talked about we're all heroes. We work in a hero business. We should be heroes. Uh, why then does this stuff linger so much? Why does comics seem to have this problem it can't get rid of? Hey everybody, this is Perch, and this is probably starting to lean into a topic that I've struggled with. Generally speaking, I talk to a lot of people, and I don't say it to brag or anything like that. It's not saying anything to brag about. I mean, most people who know me personally know my dream is to live out in an isolated cabin somewhere in Alaska and not see people for a year. You know that you watch The Shining, right? Where like the job is that Jack Nicholson is going to take care of the hotel for the winter, and how horribly isolating it would be, and you'd be all by yourself and everything, or he's with his family. It's like, man, that'd be really tough. That isolation. I'm like, sign me up. That's my job. Which I think surprises people always because I talk and I sound chummy, and I do like meeting people. If I meet you at a con, I will buy you a beer. Any of you listening to this right now, look for the guy in the Winnie the Pooh shirt. He will buy you a beer. And if it's not me, then make him buy you a beer anyway. That's what you should do. I like being friendly with people, but at the same time, I'm comfortable with myself. Um, God, how did I get onto this topic? There was some reason. Anyway, comics. The comic industry has this problem, and this is why I got onto that topic. I hear a lot of stories, and I know I hear a lot of names, and I hear a lot of kind of dirt on people, and some of it's gossiping, and some of it's truth, and generally speaking, in comics, I think it's always somewhere down the middle. I'll give you an example that a bunch of people will immediately be a lightning rod. But I was having a conversation with a guy recently that was really an enjoyable conversation, and we got on the topic of Mark Waid. And Mark Waid's an interesting case because many people will tell you that Mark Waid is very nice. He's a little socially awkward, but he's friendly and everything else. And then other people will describe him as a kind of a rampaging beast who will destroy things and has a hair trigger and kind of all this stuff. And the truth is kind of both, and also kind of down the middle. I think I only say this from my own personal perspective. There have been these kind of continual stories on YouTube videos of Mark Waid picking up tables and throwing them around and all this kind of stuff. And I have a hard time believing those. But what I do have an easy time believing, because I've witnessed one of them, and enough people I've trusted and have given accounts, that it's a guy that's hot tempered, that will slam a fist down on a table or reach across a desk and just sweep everything off the desk. And I think I described it this way because it was one of those good moments where things crystallize in your head. Rarely happens for me. Anyway, where kind of picture the three Mark Waids. There's Mark Waid number one, who is very polite. He gets some bad news. Oh, that's a shame, but I'll try harder next time, chums. And then there's Mark Waid number three, and that Mark Waid rips the desk off the floor and lifts it over his head and tosses it out a window, and with an earth-shattering, primal roar, rips off his shirt and runs galloping down the street, out of control. And then there's the number two option, the middle option, which is Mark Waid gets some bad news. His face gets kind of red, red behind the ears. And he stands up, he starts shouting into the phone. He, with one hand, sweeps the things off of his desk onto the floor, cursing loudly. Which one is the likely Mark Waid? Well, over the last 2 years, because of the whole Antarctic thing and everything else, Mark Waid number three has been the story people have described a lot, this out of control rage monster. But in reality, then Mark Waid number two is really the Mark Waid that I believe is what exists. And if you hear accounts, I mean, lots of stories about the guy. But anyway, the point I'm making here is that I hear lots of stories about people, and you often have to try and judge where they are in terms of reality. Usually they're not as extreme as people say, and usually they're not passive. There's very few just Zen-like people who live in peace, and no matter what bad things happen to them, they make lemonade and they spray that lemonade all over the room. Wait, that doesn't sound right. Anyway, uh, and I, but I I have a hard time describing some of these events because I do keep confidences. And I don't want to be the guys like a friend told me that another friend and somebody here in the business and blah, 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 blah. I try to avoid that as much as possible. I think I already do it more than I should. But it's leading me to topics like this one, which is, there are a lot of stories. The Eric Esquivel situation, the Eddie story at DC. There's a lot of stories of kind of sexual harassment or creepy behavior. And whenever there's a big con, usually in the months that follow, there's a handful of other stories going on. And that's it's continual and enough that there's the old story where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a fire there. There is definitely some behavior, and I've tried to from a psychologist perspective point out that a lot of comic creators are isolated in their life. They're like they're like me. They want to go. Oh, wait a minute. No, they're people who may not have the most social experience. There are people who, their work and their worry is probably filled with some paranoia because they're kept on a pretty short leash in terms of their career, and long term futures. They're not paid a huge sum of money, so they're very dependent on the money they have, and it creates odd situations with people. And I think some people are very, very awkward. If you go down to a con and you can get the creator away from kind of the zone where people are kind of fawning all over them and they're being kind of celebrity light, you'll find very awkward people a lot of the time. People who are just not quite adept at what's going on. And it's not. I don't say it to ridicule somebody. I just say it creates odd behavior. And then I think in addition to that odd behavior, we get various kind of lecherous behavior. We get at a con somebody gets drunk and tries to put their tongue down somebody else's throat. We get the maybe if you really want this gig, you'll work for it. Wink, wink. You know what I mean? I have a story from somebody who's like, and everybody will know who I'm talking about. Well, not everybody, but many of you will know who I'm talking about. I'm kind of waiting for the shoe to drop so I can just put the names out there. I don't want to be part of gossip, but I feel like this one's not going to be gossip for much longer. It's going to come bursting out. But there's a creator who does the kind of the double entendre, but then immediately clarifies like, "Hey, how would you like to get busy? I mean, sex." and it's I laugh. It's actually not that funny. If you were, working for this person or having to rely on this person to help get you some work, it would be pretty horrifying. But comics has a lot of that. And what's peculiar about it is that comics as an industry often takes great pains to talk about how they don't stand bigotry, they don't stand racism. We got to women's voices matter, and there's a lot of statements that get made. And every now and then, when one of those waves goes through social media, and I see a lot of creators making those statements, there's like one or two creators, or sometimes maybe 10, where I'm seeing them make the statement, and I'm thinking to myself, I've heard like 5 stories about you. And I mean, they're probably not all true, but there's at least a little bit of truth in there to make it like maybe you should just, shut the F up and not join in on this parade because you're going to look like a real goofball at some point. Or more likely, somebody who you harassed or somebody who's aware of it is going to view you posting this as one hypocritical step too far, and they're going to out you. And I think that the weird part for comics is that it is an industry where people are writing and trying to create heroes or trying to create our best versions of ourselves. Not all of them, obviously, but a lot of comics are based on the premise of good versus evil. And at the same point, a lot of the kind of the creative mentality, that creator, thought process is around helping each other out, is around, we have to do good by each other. These kinds of what should be positive. And there's definitely more of I would say, a belief within the comic community, within the creative community, that comics should be, or the people who work there should adhere by a certain code, that they should, not be sexual harassers and other things. And yet there seems to be a very high percentage, more than I've seen in other industries. And I guess that's the part that troubles me. It's the more than I've seen other industries. And I also wonder, why is it that more people aren't speaking out? And in this instance, I guess it's very easy to paint a target on rando comicsgate number 42 guy. And if that person is a lech and being creepy, you should speak out on that. I think, look, I'm not trying to offend anybody in that movement or other movements, but look, if you're saying skeezy, nasty stuff, then yeah, you probably deserve to be called out. I think you should. But at the same token, I remember my old adage I've said in other videos: fair is fair is fair. You think should be fair. If you're willing to go to the mat for this rando guy on the internet that's trying to make a crowdfunded comic, then you need to police your own world a little bit. And I'm not calling for everybody to suddenly take all the gossiping, all the stuff thrown out, because absolutely, and I know this is not a politically correct thing to say and everything else, but absolutely, it is true that people go down to a convention and two people, consenting adults, sleep with each other. And then one of those consenting adults believes they made a mistake and kind of holds it over the other person's head. That's another pretty common, not pretty common, it's happened before. The danger with that is that's not every case. And so when you bring up things like that, it's easy for people to go, oh, so you're saying that all these accusations are fake. No, I'm not saying that at all, because I know, again, for a fact, both from talking to people and having friends who have encountered very skeezy, pervy behavior, or yeah, just sexual harassment or propositions or somebody pulling their pants down. I was at a bar down on the gas lamp when a comic creator pulled down his pants and then did try to do the airplane with his junk. And I think maybe he thought it was funny. I don't know. People laughed and spit beer and said, pull your pants up. But, maybe that wasn't a good thing to do. Not, and I say maybe tongue in cheek, it wasn't a good thing to do. And it's peculiar to me. I've never been able to quite wrap my head around the idea that on one hand, we can say, this activity needs to be cut out. We write stories about heroes. And on the other hand, we're doing, airplane with your junk at a convention. And I always have this gut reaction of saying, man, beeping. I always, when I say every now and then I'm going to pop, it'll be like, I'll drink one too many shots of Patron, the liquor of champions, Patron. What helps you make good decisions? Patron. It gets you through the day. One too many shots of Patron, and I will just pop off on one of these people like, dude, look, here's a photo. Like, I've got a photo on my phone of you pulling up your pants. So why don't you shut the F up and not lecture the world on, some weird guy who hates women, because you pulled down your pants and spun your junk around. Nobody wanted to see that. I didn't want to see that. Your coworkers didn't want to see that. And maybe you don't have the moral high ground. I'm not, again, I don't think everybody should, I don't think it's excusable. I'm not saying this because I'm trying to give one group a pass over the other group. I'm just saying, if this is an industry about heroes, then we need to act heroic. All of us, especially the people who are in it and the people who want to be in it. And for what it's worth, because I'll have to go both sides, I might as well piss off everybody during this group. For the fans and for the people who are trying to break into the industry, who are upset by the direction of the industry and everything else, going off and slandering and harassing people, that's not being a hero either. You're making it funny, but you're not heroes. If we're gonna be heroes, let's be heroes. I guess that's my point. This whole video fell apart there at the end. All right, there's my peculiar. Leave a comment below. Weigh in on this dumpster fire video. Hey, subscribe, but don't subscribe for this one. This is a terrible one to subscribe for. You don't want to jump on board this train with this topic. Follow me on Twitter or Facebook, and therefore you can see the eventual Patron pop off that when it happens at Comic Perch. Most importantly, thanks for listening. And hey, the vast majority of you listening to this right now, you are heroes. You go about and you try and live your life and do the best for yourself and your family and your friends and your fellow man, fellow woman. You do the best you can. Good for you. Thanks for being a hero.